Oh, definitely not Peru.
Let me go around the table. David Diamante, good evening, sir. How you doing?
Great to see you. What's happening, man?
AJ Fight Week. That's what's happening. Dean Whyte.
How you doing? Big show this weekend.
Radio Rahim.
Not just AJ Fight Week, but my first fight week back in 2 years on this side of the pond, and for me that is a marked occasion. Who thought 2 years ago I wouldn't be back until now? It's a pleasure.
Let's go around the table. David, what a fight week. Unified cruiserweight, unified heavyweight, undisputed cruiserweight.
Hold on. Unified, the undisputed cruiserweight, that was Usyk.
Yeah.
He has not won a world title at heavyweight. Let's be clear
Correct.
about that. This is
No,
only his
correct.
third contest at heavyweight. But AJ is the unified heavyweight champ, so he's contesting for it, yes.
Yeah, and that makes it something quite special. Usyk, Dean, we spoke the other day, I'll bring you in just a moment. Usyk has to move up to that weight, but he looks like he's carrying it well. Just tell me what you think when you see him at that size.
Well, we really haven't seen him on the scale. We're going to see that tomorrow. So, Usyk's an incredible competitor. He's beaten everyone in their backyards. He's used to doing that. He's undefeated. He's an Olympic gold medalist, as is AJ. It's a great fight. It's a very compelling fight. I think it's a dangerous fight for both men. That's what makes it so interesting.
We were speaking before with a couple of the journalists who were there today, and the obvious comparison is the Tony Bellew fight. That's the last time we saw Usyk in a big fight on these shores, and that shot that Usyk landed on Bellew is surely enough to take out any fighter at heavyweight or cruiserweight.
Well, I somewhat disagree, because I think you can't. Every fight to me is like a snowflake. It's like a fingerprint. They're all different. So guys are in different shape. Guys are at different weights. Guys fight different. Styles are different. Everything's different. And Usyk's not really a one-punch knockout artist. It's more of an accumulation. That's what we saw in the Bellew fight. So yeah, the ending was super brutal, but there was stuff leading up to it. And that was a very different fight. I don't think AJ is going to fight the same fight that Tony fought. It's a very compelling fight. I can't wait for it.
What did you think of it today when AJ was talking in the press conference that he's done his homework, he's done studying, and not only has he studied Usyk's last fight, but all his previous fighters' last fights to see what kind of game plan they were going in? You talk about leaving no stone unturned. I was impressed by that. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, he's a student of the game, and he's taken this extremely seriously. He's a great ambassador for the sport, and I think that he felt that sting of losing his titles to Ruiz the first time. He went and avenged that in Saudi, which was a big test, especially to come right back after you get stopped by a guy. We saw Josh Warrington a couple weeks ago go back and face Lara. Unfortunately, we didn't get the outcome of it, really, because right as that fight was starting to heat up and turn into something, it got stopped because of a cut from a headbutt. But it takes a lot of gumption for a fighter to come back and do that, and AJ's done that, and I think now I mean, not that he didn't before, but for sure now, he's taking every opponent serious. And I think there's some people speculating about a Fury fight in the future. I don't think he's worried about that right now. I'm sure he thinks about it, but I think right now he's got Usyk in his sights.
We spoke with Dean last night, and we were saying since that loss to Ruiz, I mean, I can't imagine what was going through AJ's head in the nights after that fight. But we saw his performances against Pulev and in the rematch against Ruiz, and we saw a guy who knew he had to box smart against Ruiz and had to get the job done, so he stayed at range and he didn't, whereas against Pulev he looked ruthless. He wanted to prove that he was still that aggressor, that guy that could bang when he needed to. I think tomorrow we probably see a combination of that, but do you agree that we've seen different styles of AJ in the last couple of fights, and where do we go from here?
Well, absolutely, and I think that AJ said it himself. I mean, Usyk's had a much longer amateur career than AJ did. AJ's still learning, and that's one of the great things about him is he's a very humble guy, and he's such a student of the game, and he's always trying to get better. And I think also in fights, they're not necessarily always the same. A fight can start one way, and then sometimes a fight breaks out within a fight. Then it becomes a chess match again. I think we can see different things during a fight. We've seen that before. I'm really excited to see how it unfolds on Saturday, as is the world. I think this is probably without a doubt the biggest fight thus far of 2021. And I just think there are so many different possibilities for how this plays out. It really depends. And I mean, look, people talk about the Triple G Canelo fights, and the first one, the second one was a very different fight than the first one. You know, you had Triple G saying, "Oh, you know, you didn't come forward." And the second one, Canelo was right there. You know, Tyson Fury in the second Deontay Wilder fight was very different. This fight, I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of gamesmanship. I think both guys, you know, boxing at this level especially can be a very cerebral sport. But I think AJ said it himself today. You know, I mean, this is it's heavyweight boxing. So as much as there's a chess match going to be going on, I think he's looking for the knockout.
Dean, let's bring you in on what David's just been saying there. A lot similar to you know things we've said earlier in the week. However, I like this idea of gamesmanship, chess match, which fighter goes which way. You touched on it last night, talking about the southpaw. So what do you make of David's assessment there? Because it's fairly similar, but it's hard to read.
It's what it is. Like he said, look, he's got the vast experience as an amateur, what he's done as a professional Usyk, and Joshua being a student of the game, that's the right thing to do. If you know, a smart man would go and study such an elite opponent to figure out, you know, what and how he performed over each and every one. I feel like in the Hunter fight, there were spells in that where he didn't look invincible. You know, people are thinking he's invincible. In the Bradis fight, he didn't look invincible. You know, for me, you mentioned that the last time we seen him here was Bellew, but it was actually Chisora, which was a hell of a fight. And it told the story when you saw his face the day after the fight, and it showed you that he was in a hell of a fight. And I think that for me signifies the welcome to the heavyweight division, and I feel that's why he decided, let me put on the muscle in a slower fashion, in a longer duration, so it can sit well and I can be mobile and move and use the muscle. Because if you put on muscle too fast, too quick, you'll burn out and you move slower and you're not as sleek and all those kind of things. But I feel like for this, I think if Joshua studied anything, if he studied how Derek pressured him and how that worked for him, if he studied the Michael Hunter fight, that was close. Down the stretch he started to fade, because Usyk is clever, he's very smart, just like he was in the Bellew fight. In that Bellew fight, he's very, very... Look, he made Bellew start at a high pace, look good. All that movement tired Bellew out, and he was going to the body and setting traps and doing things, and it was an accumulation to the finale, which what it was when he caught him. But obviously, he was a man that was pressuring, then he was on the back foot, and you know, like he was showing different looks. And I think in this fight it's going to be the same thing, because I think styles make fights. You know, that's the game in boxing, styles make fights. This fight for me is definitely going to be a high level IQ fight, where people are going to have to gather the data, if it's not before, when they go up. And the first round is going to be quite important, because normally Usyk starts quite slow sometimes, gathering data, seeing how they move, and Lomo does that sometimes. But in that Teofimo Lopez fight, he done that, and he tried to come back later on, it was too late. He let too much of a gap. And if Usyk does that, it's going to be bad for him, because then he's going to have to push the pace. Then he might walk onto one of the big shots. But yeah, again, I just feel like he's too smart to kind of be set up. And he's fought at heavyweight as an amateur. He fought Joe Joyce and all these other big lummoxes who are strong with power and all that kind. Maybe they don't move as good as AJ, but yeah, again, that's an amateur. They're just a professional. And I think I think it might be a lot of cancelling out. You know, these guys cancelling out things because no one wants to be the man to make the first mistake on Saturday night, because it could be very costly. And actually, I'm not going to say that, because that might help them at what I was about to say. But yeah, anyway, yeah, that was real close, that one, that nearly came out. But anyway, but moving forward, but what I mean is, we're in for an interesting fight, and I hope it isn't like when it's cancelled out and it becomes a snooze festival, because no one's prepared, because so much is on the line and what is riding in the future after this. We're not overlooking and making it. Do you know what? Remember the Parker fight when he fought Parker? It was a bit of a snoozy fest. It was slow, and he kept it just real basic. But I think, you know, sometimes you just got to get the job done. You know what I mean? Be smart.
Guys,
use the jab, use the ring.
That took me a long time, man.
let's say the break came because the food came. It looks good. I want to bring you in Radio Rahim, man. What an honour to have you joining us, by the way. I was going to ask you what your views are on AJ from across the pond, given that you've not been over here for a couple of years. But Dean touched on the Chisora fight, and I'm going to ask all three of you the same question. But I want to start with yourself. What has Usyk learned or what could he have learned from that Chisora fight to bring in to this AJ fight?
First, let me say I'm in good company, so it's an honor to be amongst great gentlemen such as yourself. And I'm not sure that Usyk could learn anything from that Chisora fight that will help him on Saturday night. I agree with David in that these fights are snowflakes, but especially when you're breaking into a division. Chisora is very different than what Joshua will bring. And if anything at all, the experience of fighting a heavier weight class, absorbing heavier shots, well, that's experience, but I'm not sure that he couldn't have gotten that experience from just about any top heavyweight. So what Chisora brings stylistically, he's got to toss out the window when he's fighting Joshua.
Are we in agreement? Nothing from the Chisora fight could be taken into the Joshua fight?
I think you learn every fight. Every fight I think you learn. Again, sparring is one thing, amateurs is one thing, pros are different. I don't think he probably learned too much from Chaz Witherspoon. I think he probably learned more from Chisora, although it was very small crowd. It was at Wembley, and but I, like Radio said, I do think it's a very different fight. So I think that you always learn something from each fight you have, but I feel that this is a completely different fight. It's a very dangerous fight for both guys, and what Dean said I really like, because no one's going to want to make that first mistake, because especially at heavyweight, AJ carries a lot of power, and I feel he can knock out anyone if he lands them clean. Thing is, AJ, a lot of times he throws great 1-2, whether it's a left hook, whether it's a jab, but he comes with that incredible right. But he's got to land it, and Usyk can be very tricky to land on. I feel that like I said, many things can happen in this fight, and it could turn out to be a little bit slow, possibly, if these guys are just doing too much chess, no one wanting to make a mistake. I think that Bellew possibly made a mistake trying to go after Usyk, trying to goad him into a fight, where if Usyk wants to start slow like he does a lot of times, I think AJ should be okay with that, because if the round is somewhat a little bit slow, a little bit boring, I think Usyk goes back to his corner wondering, did I do enough to win that round? You understand?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big part of the game plan. And if he feels like he might be behind on the cards, he's going to want to go in and try to force the action, make something happen, and win a round. That's when he could possibly get caught by AJ.
Ask an obvious question: is it more likely that this goes to points, given that there's a lot of chess to be played?
I think anything could happen. I think we're going to see fireworks. I think it's going to be a hell of a fight. We're going to have almost 70,000 people at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. By the way, we just came from the location. It's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's something in there.
And AJ said this earlier, which I love, because someone asked him the question, do you think, having 70,000 people there, are you going to get chills? He says, the stadium's empty. I went up there and looked at it, and I already got chills. And it's really that big of a stage. It doesn't get any bigger. It's the unified heavyweight championship of the world.
Dean, let me bring you in on that point. Yes, it's 70,000 people. Yes, it's a major London stadium, but it's the first one back as well. Oleksandr Usyk and Anthony Joshua have both performed in front of huge crowds. They are both used to this. However, given the time away from crowds, can it play any factor? It's understandable from a sense of you or I, certainly myself, to get those nerves, but these guys are professionals. Do you think they are going to play any part in getting the jangles, if you like, in front of the crowd?
I was going to utter the same words. They're professionals, these guys. But you know what is? I think nervous energy is good to release. Sometimes it's how the nervousness affects you, because some people are nervous wrecks until they get in there, they start slow, and then it affects them. Some people release those nervous energies and they excel and they do great under the circumstances. Joshua's been here before. Listen, he is the golden boy in heavyweight boxing. He is the poster boy. He is the guy that has resurrected heavyweight boxing. I'll put my brother Dillian in there somewhere, because I always got to give my bro credit because he's done an amazing job. But the poster boy, what he's done, he's brought it back, he's brought females. It's just what he's done. and he's been under the spotlight for an immense and a very long time. So for this young man, it's just another day in the office. Like he said, look, come Tuesday, Wednesday, I'll be back in the gym and continuing what I'm doing. So for me, I feel like it's I don't think there's pressure. Pre-COVID, yes, the crowds are back. I was there when he fought Pulev, and he done his thing. I think the style now he's adapted with, long, keep jabbing, stepping off, holding, like he said, hooks, uppercuts, which he likes to throw in. And you're seeing him throw them quite a lot because he's working on them long and trying to keep it long. And it's understandable. He lost the first time, and he said, hey, guess what? This ain't a great feeling. I don't want to be on the end of that again. So he's adapted. And now he's closed up shop somewhat, where he's not giving you as much opportunities to catch him, and he's not giving you that sitting in the pocket and having a trade up. That's not on the table anymore for AJ. But he's trying to reign, he's trying to follow suit and be in the history books like Klitschko, 11 years reigning, So you have to adapt somewhat. But obviously we saw him, he's sleeker. There was a comparison today on the internet, and I saw how big he was in, I think it could have been that December fight or another previous fight, and he looks in tremendous shape. He looks lean, sleek, and he looks like, he's ready for action. Like he says, when he throws that 1-2, it's like a bloody piston.
Yeah.
And he's accurate with that. But yet again, you're talking about someone on the southpaw. So it's not going to be so easy to hit, someone as elusive, as skillful, as experienced. It's all to play Saturday night, but trust me, they're both tacticians.
Chisora throws a lot of really strong punches. Make no mistake, AJ's punches they're different. They're coming from different places. They're coming at different speeds.
The question that I was going to ask next, and I'll ask Radio in a moment. I'm going to let him enjoy his chips for a minute.
No, come on.
Is this the real side when you show me eat my chips? Yeah.
The side you're ever going to get is the real side. You got to ask some follow-up questions. I don't like pontificate like these fellas. Yeah, bring me with another one.
The question I was going to ask is, what is the view of Anthony Joshua from the States? You said at the beginning you've not been able to come over here for a couple of years because of obvious reasons, but what is the view of AJ? The Fury Wilder thing has been rolling on now for a while. We nearly saw, or at least we thought we were going to see Fury Joshua or Joshua Fury. What's the view on him?
AJ has a presence there now more than he did with the Ruiz fight. Maybe not for the reasons he'd like, but in America, being known goes a long way. He hasn't won a fight in America, that has to be noted. And they haven't gone back since. You can blame COVID, but to be fair, they don't look like they're headed back anytime soon either. So for Americans, we love winners. And Joshua's gonna have to go over there and be a winner in the States if he wants to be a real global superstar.
Is the obvious question there then, should Wilder beat Fury? AJ Wilder, the ultimate heavyweight knockout clash, England v America, is that the fight that makes him that star over there?
With a caveat, because there's a good reason they're not in a great rush to get over there. Because all the energy is here. When I come here, people in the streets, bus drivers, people taking tickets at the train station, waitresses even, they have some foundational knowledge of boxing. I'm able to get into a conversation about whatever fight week I'm here covering with just about 85% of the random individual that I encounter. That's simply not true in America. They've got their attention divvied up between multiple major sports, and boxing is not at the top tier of those major sports in the States. Boxing is more of an event sport. You'll have a pay-per-view night when everybody's focused on one superstar in the sport for a week, but the ongoing conversation, well, that exists here. Yeah. Selling out major arenas for guys who don't meet that superstar status, but are stars in the sport, that happens here. And Joshua respects his home crowd, his hometown, and the fans here are going to pay what's necessary to see boxing on a regular basis. If he beats Deontay Wilder, if that becomes necessary, well, of course, your fans will follow Wilder here, which is where the fight would have to be. And Joshua, having vested him in that fight, if that is how it were to go, would definitely be a rising star immediately after that fight. But even that, it's not the same as making it in America. I'm not going to give you bonus points for that. You still have to go hit that soil do the rounds there, do the shows there, engage that community of boxing fans in America, and then it might be easy or easier for him to transcend boxing in America if he goes and plants his flag and makes a stake now. He has that kind of charisma, that kind of charm, that kind of commercial appeal, where I don't think it would take him very long to be a superstar beyond the sport in the States. But you're not going to get that if you don't go there.
As the other person that knows America better certainly than I do at this table, is that a fair comment?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what is there a question? What's the question?
No, so AJ, he's not yet a star over in America. However, if he gets the win and then transcends over into America, he gets the rounds in. He's not going to achieve that status over here, which is what I think Radio was getting at. Your point there.
Well, I mean, I think AJ's a star.
Yeah.
AJ's a star. I think he's a global star, and I think that people around the world that follow boxing know who he is. He's the unified heavyweight champion. Without a doubt, he's one of the top, if not the top. I think his CV is the strongest. He's fought the toughest opposition, but there are a lot of components to becoming a star. I don't know what that exactly means, to being a star. I think there's a lot that goes with it.
So Mike, you said people who cover boxing. Well, that's the qualifier, isn't it? That's the difference between being a global superstar. I'm not saying not a star in the sport, I'm not an idiot. But, especially in the States, you don't transcend your sport. If you're not selling products outside of the direct marketing audience for your sport, then you're not a global superstar. And I don't think Joshua has reached that level for the reasons I said, which is not a knock on him. He's not pursued it. He went over there one time, he lost the fight, and that's what most people know him for, outside the sport. When people say, well, you want to cover Joshua? Oh, that's that guy that got beat by the fat guy, right? That's what they're saying. You know what I mean? They're not running down his very impressive resume. They're not talking about the prospects of what this style might be in the ring. They don't even really know him biographically. They just remember him as the guy who got hugely upset at the Garden by some fat guy. The reason they call Andy Ruiz some fat guy is because I'm talking about people who are not boxing fans, right? Until you can reach those people that aren't following our pages and know our names, you're not a global superstar. You're just a star in the sport.
But I have to say,
I disagree a little bit, just a little bit. Not to take anything from anything what you're saying. The reason I'd say he's quite a global superstar is because he has got Under Armour, which is probably one of the biggest sporting brands in America. They're everywhere. And when I
Hugo Boss, JD Sports.
Yeah. And when I go to America, I've seen him in New York, in the shops, in Vegas, in billboards. He's around. So even knowing, some people might not know exactly, even like you said, because if they're not big, baseball is big, American football is big, so basketball is big. So we understand where you're going, essentially why you're saying that. But Joshua as a brand is huge, just like Canelo. We understand boxing is a small part of the jigsaw when you're talking about sport and where the money is and all that kind of thing. But there's still good money. But when you look at him, if you come over here, people know Wilder is. You will never see Wilder on no billboards here. If you go around America, which I do, I travel everywhere. I have seen Joshua everywhere, and I always travel. So when you're talking about globally, I've seen him places. Obviously, more so because of the Under Armour, obviously that's everywhere, and then they use his picture, Joshua, and then at the same time, people go, oh, Anthony Joshua boxing, you okay? You know that. So even if you're not, women across the world idolize Joshua, looking, oh, he's handsome, he looks the, you know, it's when the brand is what it is. If you're out there, you're out there. You know what I mean?
I think your experience just differs from mine. Maybe maybe that's just the long and short of it. But I just haven't experienced that type of name recognition in the States on his behalf. Even with the branding, sure, there's Under Armour, but there are several athletes that are signed to Under Armour that I think in the States are far more immediately associated than Anthony Joshua. He's not nobody.
Can you name one?
He's not anonymous. I'm not suggesting that. What's that?
Would you like to name one?
Aaron Rodgers with Under Armour, like football players, American football players, even tennis players. Like those brands are sold because people in the States know the player, right? Yeah. You know the brand, and then you see Joshua. So if you see Joshua and know him, well then you're selling that in the States. But the name recognition and the brand often sells the product. I think in the States, a lion's share, it might be the other way around for him now. Yeah. When you say like Canelo, I think Canelo's a great example because in the States, Canelo is absolutely bigger than Anthony Joshua. He absolutely is. He doesn't even speak good English. He's only just now trying. Yeah. But when he does anything,
it's the Mexican heritage because it's ingrained in the USA.
Okay, but that's very fair.
The connection.
I'm not
over here.
Right, but you're telling me
over
why?
Here, obviously, I know we're quite a small pond to be honest, but Canelo isn't bigger than Joshua here.
Exactly. So, that's my point. When you talk about being big, when I talk about being a global superstar, being big in the States, I'm talking about big like Canelo is in the States.
Mexico is huge, and then you've got America in that, so that's why he's.
Well, what I want to say is this: I think instead of just talking about AJ and talking about Canelo, I think maybe the bigger problem would be just boxing in general. Because
very fair point.
Even a guy like Deontay Wilder, who is American and who did hold the heavyweight titles for a while, many people don't know who he is in the States. So boxing in general, people typically they know about the big names, whereas there are boxing fans. We have diehard boxing fans in the States, but it's not the majority of the people. I think Radio's point about the UK following the sport more closely is a very fair one, and it's a very real one. And I think that's why we're doing a lot of big fights over here, because the fans are rabid and they do support their charges. And we see that in all these different fights that we do, whether it's in Nottingham or Leeds a few weeks ago, or Newcastle, or Liverpool, or here in London. We see it all over. And I mean, we have these great fights, like we had JJ Metcalf versus Ted Cheeseman for the British, which was just a proper row. And that one took place in Gibraltar, but people knew that fight here in the UK. They watched it. It was a great fight. But I think in the States, people they don't follow as much the British scene as much as, I'm really entrenched in the British scene, so I'm very invested in it, and I follow it very, very closely, and I love it. There's so much happening here, and these are some of the best fans in the world, if not the best. Again, Mexico has some rabid fans, but the UK is right there. And so I think it's more on a bigger scale. We need to do more to lift boxing, and that's what I try to do every day of my life.
Yeah. I think there's so much I could go to. I think we could do a whole piece really on how to grow the sport of boxing. Is it the big fights that are not happening, which is costing the sport overall? But like you say, Dean, it's getting a little bit dark and late out here. We can start to wrap there. But I think what we can all say as a final word is this fight is the kind of fight that is needed to grow the sport. Maybe Oleksandr Usyk is not known worldwide. Maybe Anthony Joshua is on the brink of being a superstar. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. However, the records will say undisputed cruiserweight champion, unified, get it right way around, unified heavyweight champion. That is the kind of fight that makes the sport credible. That's the kind of fight that needs to happen.
It's a great fight. There's no doubt. I cannot wait for Saturday night. Yeah, I'm excited to be in the ring. I'm more excited to be on the side watching this fight unfold.
Yeah. Final words, guys. I think
absolutely what he said. I'm just excited for it to go down, so we can all put our thought process to pasture and say, well, we was right on this subject or we was wrong on this subject. But just being a fan, just being able to see it and experience it, wonderful feeling.
Let me finish my thought in saying, even part of my frustration is, I think Joshua, of all the current fighters, weight divisions aside, has the greatest potential to be the biggest star, not just in the sport, but maybe one of the biggest stars across sports in the world. Like, the guy has that kind of appeal.
Yeah.
Personally, and it comes through commercially. No heavyweight is bigger than the undisputed heavyweight championship. And to David's point, if boxing can get out of its own way and make that fight happen, whomever holds that crown, holds the title not just of undisputed, but of global superstar in a way that we probably haven't seen since Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson, in that era of heavyweight. So we're so close to that I think we're all very fortunate to be here in what I like to call the Final Four of Undisputed, and seeing the first of those two matchups, which hopefully bring us all together on both ponds and find out who's the best, not just in this division, but in the world.
I see you fist pumping.
Amen.
Yeah. Listen, boys, we'll get inside because it is